All right, this is my Arcane Archer build. It's updated for the Oblivion remaster. I made one of these my top 5 builds for Classic Oblivion, but there's a lot of changes in the remaster, so I want to talk about them. First, we're going to start with the race and birth sign. Now, this changes based on the difficulty you want to play. If you're playing on Adept, the easiest difficulty, I really recommend a High Elf, and you either pick Apprentice if you want to be a glass cannon and some challenge, or a Mage if you're looking for just an easy game. High Elf Mage is going to be really powerful. If you're playing on Expert or Master, Breton is really the only choice. That 50% magic resist is such a massive boost. You're really gimping yourself just for not picking Breton. It's just not worth it. Breton Mage, I think, is a better choice for Expert. Get that extra Magicka. If you're playing Master, Breton Lord is pretty helpful early game just to push you through. Breton Mage is better late game, but you have to get through the early game. So maybe on Master, I'd pick Breton Lord. Unless you're feeling bold, you can go Breton Mage. For specialization, a lot of people talk about how magic specialization, the magic skills level so quickly, so they don't pick magic specialization. And I get that, but honestly, they're the only skills that do anything. They're the only good skills in the game. So I would not pick stealth either. I would just stick with magic. If you're going to power level all your skills, sure. Stealth is probably the better choice, but I don't really like doing that. I don't often power level my skills, and so I'm going to go with magic. I think even alchemy does level much slower than people say it does, and I'll talk about that later. For your attributes, you have willpower and intelligence. Again, if you're playing on master, sure, endurance and strength go way up in value, obviously endurance and maybe even speed. So I'd stick with willpower to keep that high fatigue so you're able to block a little bit more and able to sprint to get away and not die, rather than that intelligence early game isn't super necessary. Really depends on the difficulty. These are my choices, assuming you're playing expert. So these majors are the ones that are my favorite after playing around. My character that I did my stream on did not pick these majors, but I think these would make the best character. Marksman, Destruction, Restoration is kind of the meat of the build. Light armor, I'll talk about later, but it has a lot of problems. You could either be a light armor Arcane Archer or a no armor Arcane Archer, kind of like a mage with a bow. Both of them are valid. I'll talk about why, unless you're willing to train light armor and get it up to 100, you might as well just go with a mage with a bow. But we'll talk about that later. Athletics, to make sure you're not getting hit. You don't want enemies to hit you. You want to be fast on your feet. You could trade this for acrobatics, but I think athletics functions a little bit better. Alchemy and conjuration are really vital to pretty much any good build. Maybe not conjuration, but as an archer, it's nice, especially for that early game, to have somebody to back you up and to keep you alive. If you're playing on expert or master, it just makes the experience so much better to get you into that end game where you're able to make your build. And by end game, it doesn't actually help you nearly as much, but you have everything else to back you up by then. You've leveled up your other skills. So if you really want that 100% spell effectiveness, drop light armor and pick up, all of these are good choices. You could also do like alteration. I could add that. Alteration's a decent choice. A lot of people like the role play of sneaking around. The only reason I would say mysticism is because it's kind of annoying to grind up to 25 to get Soul Trap. And if you pick it as a major, you just start with it. You don't have to deal with that. You have to buy the spell, but you don't have to spam Minor Detect Life to get it. Now, that's, again, not the end of the world, but I really do like natural play. I don't like having to do that kind of thing. It's not very fun. So what am I training? Well, if you pick light armor, train that first, get that up to 95% spell effectiveness as fast as possible. Then switch to marksman until 75, so you unlock that paralyze perk. It's huge, really useful. You could continue to level marksman up to 100 or switch back to light armor depending on which one you want to do. You don't really need to train your magic skills because, well, you majored in them and you're specializing in them and you're using them a lot. So they are going to level quickly. That's kind of the point of the build. You don't have to waste your gold training those because that's what you're doing to level. Attributes, I think willpower is your best one. If you're playing on adept, intelligence and speed are going to be the most fun. Obviously, again, endurance and strength are way more important. You could swap agility for speed, but honestly, I just don't think very much of your damage is coming from your bow. You do want high marksman skill to unlock that paralyze perk. You don't need that multiplier from agility, and agility just isn't doing a ton for you. You're going to get all the fatigue you need from your willpower. And if you really need to restore your fatigue, restore fatigue potions are the easiest potion in the game. You're going to have tons of them. You're probably going to be selling more than you'd ever want. I just don't really value agility that much. Honestly, it might even be lower than this. It's just bow damage is not that important for you. The physical aspect. Birth Stone. If you don't know about Birth Stones, you should. Obviously, you're going to want to get like the Tower Stone or something to unlock Fortify Skill. The Thief Stone's a lot of fun because that'll get you 20 agility and 20 luck as one cast for 2 minutes. It's pretty useful. I know I just talked crap about agility, but it's just a little boost. 20 agility as a buff, and it unlocks Fortify Attribute, and the 20 luck is +8 to all skills for 2 minutes. That includes, +8 includes Alchemy, it includes light armor, restoration, everything that you're doing except acrobatics and athletics, so it doesn't actually make you move faster. But 20 luck is a lot of luck, even if it's only for 2 minutes. Another good choice is the Atronach, 30% spell absorb. If you're picking high elf apprentice, you're probably going to want that. And honestly, if you're playing on a higher difficulty, 30% spell absorb can be the difference between life and death. So it's not a bad choice to just have that one that you can use to keep you alive. Later on, you're going to be getting things like the Jones Stone that can make you go invisible and help too, but these ones you can get at level 1, you just run up to them and grab them. Some early game spells, well, you need Soul Trap. You're going to want your weakness spells from the Skingrad Mages Guild. These are just lists of people. You know, Solanus here is in Skingrad too. He sells Soul Trap. Thoron's in Choral. So Thoron and Choral and Solanus together sell everything you possibly need. You want Summon Scamp. Scamp is a little bit better than your Skeleton. It's not amazing. It'll help more than your Skeleton because it's another cast or two, and you can kind of hide behind him and your enemies will have to run past him and maybe run into him. So your early game strategy, Poisons, Carry On Master. You have Harada, Stinkhorn, Wisp, Stock Caps, Nightshade, Peony Seeds, Dragon's Tongue. You can make a whole bunch of damage help poisons and honestly just use them all the time if you're playing Master. A weakness to poison spell will help you a lot too. If it's an Argonian, cast weakness to poison first, then take him out. Your summon to very early game will be able to deal with Argonians, but by late game, you're going to need something else, and I think that's where weakness to poison come in. So you have summons and poisons. You know, you're summoning a guy and you're hiding behind him. Shoot with your arrows to distract for your summon and to level marksman and save Magicka, but really you're killing them with your destruction spells, your poisons, and your marksman. When you get enchants, as soon as you do, Fortify Destruction. This will make your damage spells so cheap that you can just spam them all the time. They don't cost anything. Destruction will be 100 before you know it. Destruction actually does level very, very quickly. Conjuration and Restoration, not as much, especially because you're probably not going to want to continue to waste your Fortify skill and chance on those. You could Fortify one of those, but you're probably going to want to switch to Shield or Fortify Magicka or some other way to stay alive at this point, especially if you're playing on a higher difficulty. If it's Adept, don't worry about it. Fortify Conjuration, let's go. Get that up to 100 quick. I would probably only get Destruction to 100 before I switch to more defensive enchants because you want to be able to take a hit and not just instantly die. As you get to the mid game, well, get summon everything else. There's Athragar and Choral. He's got all the summons you need until you're at a master, and that's Borisian in the Arcane University. There's a couple other guys too, like Dremora Lords from Volinaro. Don't go too far in the Mages Guild if you want that one. You're going to want Feather if you're wearing armor, and even if you're not wearing armor, Feather's always nice to carry more things and to remove that worn weight variable so you can move a little bit faster. Even in no armor, you're holding a bow and that weighs something and you have it equipped and you're wearing clothes. They're usually pretty light and it's not going to slow you down much, but Feather, it's nice to make that 0. If you want a power level, Fortify skill is huge. You can cast a short duration Fortify Conjuration and then cast your big summon. You can cast Fortify Restoration and then level up your Restoration really fast. So you don't even need those enchants. You can just cast a short Fortify spell and then power level those things. I don't really power level much, but if you really want to, you can. Weakness spells are vital, and joining the Mages Guild or getting that tower to make custom spells. If you don't know how to do that, well, look it up. You do need to do that. Weakness spells, a lot of people have a gripe against them and they don't want to use them because they feel like they're cheating. And I get that when you talk about weakness stacking, but just using weakness to magic and weakness to poison and weakness to fire can make a fire spell do 4 times as much damage and your damage, health, poison do 4 times as much damage. You cast it once. That's absolutely worth your time. It's not cheating at all. It's just a custom spell. And the game, at least Classic Oblivion, was balanced around that this is in the game, not weakness stacking, but that weakness spells were in the game. They allowed you to kill things at a reasonable rate and not feel like damage sponges, where Adept doesn't really need it, and then Expert and Master, it's like, oh, well, now you do need it, because I would say Expert, you don't need a weakness stack at all, where Master, you're going to feel like you need to. But for Expert, if you just cast a weakness spell once, it's going to feel like enough to kill things. So your mid-game strategy is still using poisons and summons, but now you have weaknesses. You can get more creative. You have more viable options. You're going to be spamming Restore Magicka potions. There's some common ingredients, especially as you level up your alchemy, and that's why I pick it as a major skill. It just starts higher. I have more options from each ingredient. I can see two effects right away. It's going to help you in any situation. Summon more, fortify your spells, escape, recalibrate if you have to. On high difficulties, you're going to be spamming spells and attacks so much. Light armor and armor are going to be underleveled, like very much so. Seriously, get some gold, use a trainer on heavy armor or on light armor. That's why I think a cloth build is valid. We'll talk more about that later. But we really got to talk about weakness stacking and what weakness is. You want to use weakness spells. So if you have a base cost of a spell, weakness to magic has a base cost of 0.25. So if I want to do 100% for 7 seconds at 100 skill, on touch it costs 12.7 magicka. On target it costs 19 because it's a 1.5 multiplier. If I'm talking about 0.1, this is weakness to any element or weakness to poison, all of a 0.1 base cost. So they don't cost very much. If I have every fire, frost, and shock, every element and poison on a target spell, that's going to cost 30.5. If you add in weakness to magic, costs 49.6. So that's every element is going to take double damage and poison's going to take double damage for 7 seconds. If you switch it to touch, which doesn't really work very well with this build, it only costs 33. You can make it work, it's just different. You also, mixing up the elements would make your damage spell cheaper. For example, 60 shock for 3 seconds is 88. That's 180 damage for 88 Magicka. If you would cast a weakness spell first, it's going to be quadrupled. So the damage that you're going to be dealing is 180 times 4. It's huge. Where this one costs 63, it's 25 less, and it's still going to do 180 times 4 because you have all the weaknesses going. So you either save a little bit of Magicka here, only doing one element and magic, or one element and poison and magic, or you split them up and save Magicka and the damage. So it really depends how you want to do that. On my character, I chose to save Magicka by picking one element. So my damage spell is more expensive because I just didn't have it do as much damage. I don't need it to do 180 all in one go. So mid-game, I'm picking one element, especially mid-game. I want to quickly highlight from my stream here, if I shoot this Spider Daedra with a bow that's enchanted with elemental damage, it's not doing a ton of damage. And without the elemental damage, I would have to shoot the Spider Daedra a whole bunch to kill them. And this is only on expert difficulty. But the moment I cast a couple weakness spells, I have some damage enchanted on the bow, I do a touch spell and the Spider Daedra dies so fast you can't even see it happen. So that mid-game, archery is really just a way to get a poison to an enemy, or it's a way to get an enchantment dealt onto an enemy. It's not useful in terms of the actual marksman damage. It's not doing nothing, but unless you're investing very heavily into it, it's doing very little. Okay, back to the spreadsheet. I'm going to talk about poisons now and using fire weakness combined with poison weakness. And that's because a more common element for poisons is fire, because there's just a lot of fire damage ingredients that you could pick from. They're pretty cheap. We have Fire Salt, Steel Blue Entomola Caps, Fiddlesticks, and Imp Galls. If you do all of these, you can get, Imp Galls are kind of tricky because they require 75 skill, but you can get fire damage poisons. So if you have 100 alchemy and only apprentice equipment, a fire poison will deal 6 damage for 23 seconds. If you cast weakness to poison and weakness to fire, so not magic, that doesn't boost it, it's going to do 24 damage a second. You cast the same spell twice or 3 times, it's going to do 96 damage per second and end up dealing over 2,200 damage. And this ignores difficulty. So on Master, for example, this would be doing this times 6, the equivalent of 576 damage per second, for a total of 13,000 damage. The equivalent of dealing that much damage on Adept. On Master. The equivalent of dealing this much damage without a poison on Master. After you get the best equipment, these numbers go up. This is combining a Fire and Frost poison. So you have Fire, Frost, Spittle, and Milk Thistle. Fire damage would be 9 seconds. Frost would be 9. You can cast a Fire, Frost, and Poison weakness spell on them. After just one cast, it's dealing 72 damage per second, annihilating most enemies very quickly. And this ignores spell absorption, and it ignores resist magic, unlike damage health poisons. Damage health poisons are not boosted by weakness to fire or weakness to frost, but they are boosted by weakness to magic. They are reduced by resist magicka, and they are absorbed by spell absorption. So this was where fire and frost poisons and shock poisons can come in handy against those Zivili or those Dremora with really high magic resist where your ramping isn't working very well. So if you really want to get absurd numbers, you cast 2 different spells that have weakness. So for example, I could have 100% weakness to poison, fire, and magic on one spell, and another one on my bow. And so if I cast that spell, I apply 100% weakness to fire, poison, and magic, so my multiplier becomes 2, and my final damage multiplier to pretty much anything I'm doing, whether that's a damage health poison or a fire damage poison or a fire damage spell, is going to be times 4 damage. Then I hit him with the bow, which applies the same thing, and now he's at a times 16 multiplier. I could then poison the next shot. Now the problem here is your bow cannot be boosted. The poison from your bow cannot be boosted by the weakness on your bow. So this only works if you switch to a second bow. So you could have 2 different spells that you're alternating between, or 2 different bows for this to work fully. So I could cast a spell, shoot him with my bow, cast a spell, poison my bow, poison my second bow, and shoot him with my second bow, and it's going to have 144 damage multiplier and do 1,296 fire damage per second. Let me show you what that looks like. that 6 fire, 6 frost weakness. Okay, and then we'll hit him with that. Oh, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use a magic spell, weakness to shock, poison, and magic, and my bow is also weakness to shock, poison, and magic. We'll start with the spell because it lasts longer. We'll do spell, bow, spell, bow, maybe one more spell and one more bow. So that's 6. 6 total ramps. Now, if I use console commands and I do get AV health, he has 9,990 health because I set his health to 10,000. So now let's go to my inventory and we're going to use a shock poison damage and see how much it does to him. Shock damage poison. Let's hit him with it. And he's dead. So 6 attacks ramped that up and I can do 10,000 damage. And that ignores difficulty. So if he's got 300 health on Adept, I only need to deal 300 worth of damage even on Master. And I mean, this was on Master, and I just dealt 10,000 damage to an enemy on Master difficulty. In Classic, I believe you had to switch weapons, so I would have had to switch to my Glass Dagger to do that. Also, if you're afraid you're going to miss with the poison, you might as well switch to a melee weapon because it's okay if they miss. But in the remaster, it doesn't look like you need to switch to a different weapon. This poison can still benefit from the same weapon. Okay, that's enough about poisons because honestly, any weakness ramping works. It doesn't have to be poison. It could just be normal weakness ramping. I'll show that as well later. That's really, but I think everybody knows that's how you do master difficulty. You do weakness ramping with shock and weakness, and then with a weapon and a spell, and then you'll kill them. But I'll show that in my end game footage anyway. We're going to talk about skill increases because more important than the end game is how we get there. The reason I say that you should pick magic specialization is because it's more important to level up those skills, in my opinion. Now, these are the different experiences you get for marksman per shot, whether you pick magic specialization or stealth. Now, this is assuming you've picked marksman, light armor, and alchemy all as major skills. These are the base experiences you get, for making a potion, for getting hit, or for shooting someone with an arrow. This is your major skill. That's alchemy moved up there for some reason. And then this one over here is how much you would get if you chose it as a specialization as well. Alchemy obviously would be magic specialization will be the higher one. These numbers are how many arrows you need to shoot, for example, at level 25 to get to level 26. These highlighted numbers, these highlighted numbers are where you would start at as a Breton or a high elf if you pick this as a major skill. So for example, a Breton who chose alchemy as a major skill and specialized in magic would start at 35. So they would need to make 7 potions to gain a single level. You need a lot more shots to get your marksman to 100. It's just a lot of shots in general. 200 shots to gain a single level, it takes forever. Even if you pick it as a stealth specialization though, by 71, you still need to shoot 100 arrows that hit to gain 1 marksman skill. And you might think, oh, on Master, I shoot so many arrows. It's just that's so many. I don't want to shoot that many. Really, after you get light armor up, you're going to train. And if you're playing on anything other than Adept, you can't take 60 hits as a light armor. That's just, it's ridiculous. You're going to die. Instead, you need to use a trainer or use clothes. Those are your 2 options there. It's just too many hits required, too many shots required. Next is alchemy. A lot of people think you shouldn't use alchemy as a major skill and you shouldn't spec into magic specialization. You need to make over 2,000 potions if you do that. And you might, I've heard a lot of people say, oh, it only took me an hour as a minor skill to get alchemy from 5 to 100. I've had so many comments that say that. I don't believe you. Maybe you duped ingredients. Look, 25 potions to get from 63 to 64. That's a lot of potions. And when I've been playing my game on my stealth archer, it took a while. I just got there. It took forever of grinding, going and getting all the skin grad grapes. There's 70 of them. If I get 70 grapes and 70 of something else, what is that? 2 levels here? I'm going to go from 85 to 86, making 70 potions, grinding out, getting a whole farm, and then waiting 3 days. I don't play that way. I'm not going to go pick every single grape in a farm, wait 3 days, which is like a full minute of just staring at your monitor, moving a thing slowly down, and then run around and pick the same grapes 20 different times just to get my alchemy skill up. It's the most boring way to play ever. I'd rather just uninstall. Everybody's different. Maybe you love that. I don't want to judge you or make you feel bad for enjoying that, but if you're anything like me, this is so much more enjoyable. 1,200 potions, honestly, that's going to happen from natural play. 33 potions to get from 99 to 100. It's not that crazy. You're going to get there. Picking it as a major isn't so bad, but 1,700 potions to get, this is, I said sum of J30. So this is starting from where you would start at. You'd still need 1,700 potions. That's 3,400 ingredients before you get to Master. And Master is such a big bump from Alchemy. And if you're playing on anything other than Adept, Alchemy is such a vital part of your build. It's so crucial to keeping you alive and to killing things with poisons that I highly recommend. Just pick Magic Specialization just so you get it there faster. It can carry you through any difficulty with any build. Okay, late game damage dealing. So I've always liked to talk about some good items that you could get. The Acrobat's Amulet is a really good one. Here, I could pull up the Oblivion UESP quick. So the Acrobat's Amulet is only from this guy in the Vile Lair, Deep Scorn Hollow. But it's 20 speed, 20 athletics, and 20 acrobatics. It's just so much movement that I would absolutely use the Acrobat's Amulet. You could get some reflect damage. You could pick the Necromancer Amulet, whatever. Mundane Ring is pretty vital, pretty much for any build if you want to stay alive. If you're planning on going Apprentice, you're going to need, we'll highlight some things for Apprentice here. This will be the Apprentice Highlight. You're going to need the Ring of Sunfire and Spellbreaker to get you up to 90% spell reflect, because it's just going to be too difficult to get to 100% magic resist starting from negative 100. It's just a lot. Assuming you didn't pick Apprentice, you picked Mage or Lord, well, then all these things work. Obviously, if you're Breton with the Mundane Ring, you don't need the Diadem of Euphoria. That gives resist magic. You don't need Savior's Hide or the Birthright. Well, Birthright gives Magicka. Savior's Hide, that gives resist magic. Really, you are going to need some Shock Shield or Fire Shield to give you that 25% armor. If you're not getting light armor to 100, you're going to need 2 or 3 of them to get to the armor cap, because light armor is just not very good. Alteration spells, low magnitude, high duration shield spells from Alteration can get you to that armor cap too, but that's just one more thing you got to hotkey, one more buff you got to keep up. Really, some plus 50 Magicka buffs are really nice. I like the Boots of Spring Heel Jack. It's 50 jump, 50 acrobatics. That's just fun. If you have the Acrobat's Amulet and Spring Heel Jack, you can very easily just have a base 150 to 170 acrobat. That's crazy. A lot of acrobatics. You can jump very high. Birthright of Astalon is just something you can buy with Mercantile. It's also 50 Magicka. It also gives 5 agility. If you're not save scumming Sigil Stones, I recommend that, because that will save you. You just won't need as many. Pants and gloves. There's not any amazing pants or gloves, so I would use those as your Sigil Stones. Same with your shield. These could be your shock shield as well. It doesn't really matter whether you're doing which ones you're doing them on. If you are a high elf, the Diadem of Euphoria and Savior's Hide are great. They have resist magic. With the Mundane Ring, that'll get you to 95%. The Ring of Vitality makes you immune to paralyze, which is really nice because they dramatically improve Spider Daedra. Their little guys just run up and paralyze you really fast. It also makes you immune to poison, which is nice if you're not an Argonian, especially in the Shivering Isles. It's just one ring. It's not easy to find. Ring of Perfection's not a bad choice. It's plus 10 to all attributes. Or, it could be another plus 50 to Magicka. It doesn't really matter your choices here. Just something, whatever you're finding is a good choice, and whatever you enjoy is a good choice. You're going to stay alive. I messed around with buffing my willpower and Magicka, and honestly, mana ramping is not nearly as good as it was in Classic Oblivion because of the Magicka regen delay, and that max Magicka doesn't benefit your Magicka regen anymore. So because of that, I don't actually recommend mana ramping with this skill. You can cast some spells to fortify your Magicka and willpower. Not the worst idea. Some maybe fortify willpower 40 for 2 minutes you could afford. 1 minute here costs 261 for 100 willpower. So maybe 40 willpower for 2 minutes wouldn't be too crazy. Add in some Magicka. Just so you always have 140 to 180 willpower isn't the worst thing. So skills you got to max out. These ones, you're going to use trainers. Max out all of these 5 skills. The only one that really needs a trainer is going to be Marksman. Next, these really augment the build. If those other 5 are max, you can go to trainers for these. Obviously, armor is going to help your bow damage, help your armor quite a bit. Same with light armor. Getting light armor from 99 to 100 is an absurd power boost for armor. And so if you're wearing light armor, you just got to get it to 100. Athletics you'll get from running around. Sneak will give you more sneak attack damage. Obviously, that's useful. And then these, they're not necessarily part of the build, but they do help actually quite a bit. Illusion, I'm not playing this as a stealth archer. This is an arcane archer. It's different. So I don't really use that. But if you want to have some crowd control, that paralyzing a crowd of enemies is very useful when you're an archer. Instead, I'm using these hotkeys, which I'm going to talk about. And I added Fortify Speed 100 points for 2 seconds to this. So I have a weakness spell, whatever weakness I want, whether that's shock, poison, magic, fire, it doesn't matter. That's my number 1 hotkey, and I add a little sprint to it, Fortify Speed 100 for 2 seconds. My number 2, 1 second Soul Trap, and my damage. That's 80 shock damage, so if I get my weakness up, I shoot him with this. That's another 100% shock weakness. That's 2 different spells. Remember, if we go to this weakness stacking, if you have 2 different spells, you're at a 16 times multiplier. So when I come up to hit him for 80 damage, well, what's 80 times 16? I have no idea, but that's 1,280 damage. You're blowing things heads off. So unless if it's a Zivi with spell absorption or Dremora who has spell absorption and a really high magic resist to start with, you're going to kill things. There'll be a lot of things you can kill with just one cast, one shot with your bow, and one damage spell. That's only 80 Magicka and one charge, and you're just going to take their soul. 3, if you want to have some of those buffs, this is where I would put those, but honestly, I instead just opted to use Restore Magicka Potions. That doesn't say Restore, but let's just pretend it does. 4 is my summon. Right now, I don't have 100 Conjuration on my character, so it's just a Clan Fear at 75. When you get to 100, play around with whatever you want. People keep telling me to make summoned monsters tier list, but I think I've used Conjuration less than all of you, than anybody who's watching this video, and so I think you should make the tier list and send it to me. For 5, this is where I put my poison. It doesn't have to be damage health. It could be another buff, but damage health is one that it's so easy to make 100 of them at late game that I'm willing to hotkey it. I make 100 of the same poison and I just applying it all the time. And I don't care if I miss, it's not a big deal. And if I've ramped up, this has weakness to poison. I don't put weakness to poison on my bow, on this bow, but if I have another weapon, I could have a second bow with this same enchant, but instead of weakness to shock, it would be instead of the shock damage and weakness to shock, it would be weakness to poison. Last thing I want to talk about is bow damage just sucks. Even if you do that sneak attack dagger trick for 8 times damage, I don't really want to talk about this spreadsheet so much. This is more me just looking at numbers, at different enemy healths that they'll have. And, you know, a Clan Fear is coming pretty early game. 540 damage is just, you're not going to do that. Even with a ×8 bow shot, you know, if I got 100 agility, a decent bow, a decent arrow, and 100 marksman, ×8 with the dagger trick is 300 damage once. And then you still have this guy with over 200 health. And at that level, you're not going to have 100 marksmen and 100 agility. You're going to have 60 marksmen and 90 agility. And your bow is probably going to be even worse than that. And you're definitely not over repairing it. It's only 190, which is just not enough. It's just not enough. And I don't think, yes, it could work, but I really don't want to have to sit there and shoot the same guy over and over and over and over and over again. This was also kind of me theory crafting, like, should I play a Wood Elf? No, you should never play a Wood Elf. They're short like Todd Howard. We're not going to play a Wood Elf here. I am going to show you a bit of what my character that I've been streaming is like now. He's now more of a full Arcane Archer. So let me show you. All right, so after the build is done, I have my shortcuts here. Weakness to shock and poison. I also added 100 speed to myself for 2 seconds. Not necessary at all. I just think it makes it easier for me to get into position to keep ramping things up. Really, the poison is not necessary, but there are certain enemies that don't die very quickly, and I think it helps. The reason Marksman is good, and the only reason I value it as a skill, is because of that Paralyze. So these guys have immunity to shock damage, so I might need to cast a few of these first. And my bow, because the duration is only 4 seconds, I don't want to just... I don't want to start with that because I'll lose my stacks. So I can cast a couple of these, maybe 3 of them, and then I think I only hit him with 2. Cast a couple of these, and then finish him off. And you see, even as someone who's immune to shock, that dropped him very quickly. I put 3 as my Restore Magicka Potions if I need. I should be fast enough to outrun these guys. And if not, well, I'm just going to keep running. So as you can see, I don't really need the bow. The bow is just to augment the build. Now, there are certain characters where the bow is more beneficial. Let's go into the Oblivion Gate and let's look at them. Okay, Spider Daedra are not ones where I really need the bow. In fact, the bow does not really help against Spider Daedra. So the Dremora have 50% natural magic resist at this point. So if I get some ramping going, and then I get a couple bow shots in him, something's going to stick. And if it's not, I can always use poison too to finish him off. So these guys, because of that high spell absorption and that high magic resist, I can't always kill them. I also have a heal spell that adds more sprint, and if I'm using those magic potions, I can heal myself quite a bit. Now I could bump up those numbers. I have them pretty low. But it's nice to also have cheap spells because then you can spam and you don't have to burn through as many potions. Oh, did she just heal? Oh, there we go. The bow is important. It's got 1 second soul trap, 8 damage, and then just this 100% shock and weakness magic. I put it for 4 seconds because that gives me a lot more time to make sure the weakness doesn't fall off. So a couple of these will do it, combined with one of these. When you have that magic resist, you don't really have to dodge anything. That helps too. You can keep Azure Star hotkeyed. I keep it to 7. Now Zivi, this is what I really wanted to talk about. So they have summons. I like to distract their summons with my own Clan Fear. That way it's kind of more of a one-on-one fight. Oh, he will wreck your Clamfear really fast, though. But if his Clamfear gets in the way, it's a lot harder to just nuke him because he does a lot of absorbs. And if you're not able to get stuff stacked up on him, he's just not going to take any damage. If you do get stuff stacked up on him, he instantly dies, as you can see. So it takes, I always give a couple extra shots for a Zivi just because they're going to absorb a lot of your shots. They have a 50% spell absorption, and it can be quite difficult as a weakness ramper. Now remember, this is on master difficulty, so if you're not on master difficulty, you don't really need the weakness ramping. You maybe hit him twice and hope that one of them sticks. As long as one of those weaknesses sticks, you'll probably wipe him out. So a couple weaknesses, an arrow, and then zap him and he's dead. We can start with the bow too, because it lasts 4 seconds. It should be plenty of time. As long as I can get him within that 4 seconds. I think mine fell off there, which is okay. Not the end of the world. Oh, you. Spider Daedra are annoying. I always try to kill them quickly because I do not like being paralyzed. That's actually the one way you can really die on Master, is if you're goofing off and you let those guys paralyze you. That's actually the main reason I put this dash on my weakness. So pretty much I'm always running around with a lot of extra speed. So against the Zivi, if you get a couple stacks going, the poison should also do a lot of damage. He can absorb the poison because it does count as magic, but if he doesn't, he's going to drop pretty quick just from the poison. Poison, remember, is not affected by difficulty, so even the fact that it's on Master doesn't change anything. Damage health counts as a magic spell, and so that can be absorbed, where if you're fighting someone with a lot of spell absorption or a lot of magic resist, you know, there's one arena fight where they use the Grey Aegis and they have 100% magic resistance. If you use a poison that has frost, fire, or shock damage, that does not count as magic damage. With that said, it is also not boosted by a magic damage weakness. So damage health are boosted by weakness to poison and weakness to magic to do ×4 damage. Frost damage is boosted by weakness to frost and weakness to poison for ×4 damage. You can't add weakness to magic does not bump that up to ×8 damage. ×4 is the most multiplier you're going to get from that frost damage. Sadly, because it'd be really cool if you could get like a ×8 multiplier with your poison by doing weakness to poison, frost, and magic, but you can't. There is also a lot of crowd control options. If that's how you want to do it too, that can help. With Paralyze is not a bad choice, but I don't have any illusion skill at the moment, so if I wanted to do that, I would have to grind up my illusion skill, and it's not really part of the build, but obviously adding it into your build would not hurt your build. So there's no reason not to if you want to. Droth are probably the easiest enemy because they take that moment to cast their shield spell, and so it allows you to weakness ramp. I don't even think I needed that many, so we'll test on another Droth. But Droth are definitely the easiest enemy for this build. So let's see, 1 weakness, 1 arrow, and then we'll try the touch spell, and we'll see if that kills him. Yeah, so 1 weakness, one arrow, and 1 shock damage, and he's done. So I would say Droth are the easiest enemies in the game for this build. You can stealth, but honestly, because I prefer to start with the cast, I usually don't do my sneak attack. It's just not really part of the build. And with that spell absorption, I want to get that ramping going. The shot is nice because it can paralyze him, but it's not really how I'm going to ramp because it only lasts 4 seconds. I want to get the longer duration, the 7-second cast, and then while that's on him, get a couple of these arrows. Ooh, I don't want to crash my game, so I'm not actually going to do that. We'll just kill him. So if you do shoot a guy who's on the ground who's paralyzed, the chance of crashing your game is the chance you have to paralyze. So maybe avoid that. It's up to you though, how you want to play it. It would be nice if they would just fix their game. And so it does actually make me not really like marksman nearly as much as I thought I would, because crashing your game just because you double paralyze a guy is quite annoying. So if I do 2 casts, 2 arrows, and a zap, that's pretty much going to kill anybody, because that is quite a lot of weakness. So for this build, I have 95% magic resist. With my spell effectiveness, I could cast something like this to put me at the cap and make me completely immune to magic for 2 minutes. Only costs 47 Magicka. There is also, I tack that on to some of my heal spells if I want. There's also fatigue regen. You can do that for 2 minutes. This will heal me 4 fatigue every second. So it just adds 4 fatigue to your regen. And as you notice, if I sprint, it doesn't look like my fatigue is, it's barely going down. As I have more Magicka, I could do more. There's also ramp spells. You know, I have things I call cheap long buff. It just gives me a little bit more willpower and a little bit more Magicka. You don't have to do those things, but I don't like to hotkey those, and so I don't want to take all of my hotkey slots away, but they are very good. If you're willing to do the time to ramp, it can be quite powerful. So in the bottom left there, that is my resist magic for that 2-minute buff, that restore fatigue for that 2-minute buff. And so I'm still pretty much invulnerable to magic damage and to, I'm not going to run out of fatigue, so I can always block if I want to. Oops, I'm just going to miss though. Can use heals, and my heal potion is actually, as you can see, they're not really doing any damage to me. I can summon a Clan Fear. I have lots of Magicka potions going now. That will help. But being completely immune to magic makes a pretty serious difference in this game. These guys, because of this spell absorption, I'm going to be using some poisons, and hopefully that will help him die a little quicker. Oh, well, it looks like something went through and he just dropped anyway. Oh, he just dropped down in front of me. Hello. It says hello there. It's Obi-Wan Kenobi. But if I get him once with his zap, that should be tons of damage. Yeah, he's done. And there you have it. Without dying once on Master Difficulty at level 27, I completed an Oblivion Gate. Notice my birth sign says the Thief. I don't recommend that. I'd be much better off with a bonus 50 Magicka from picking a Mage or picking a Lord sign for that early game. Though if I'm going High Elf, I would pick the Mage for sure. If you want that extra defenses, you should be picking a Breton. And if you really want all the defenses, we have Breton Lord, but Breton Mage is probably the best for Expert or Master. If I'm playing on Adept, I'm doing High Elf Apprentice or High Elf Mage, because just for the big Magicka pools makes a big difference, and it'll allow you to cast whatever spells you want. The luck is not really benefiting this character much. If I'm ever in trouble, I have all of these ramp spells I made. You don't have to do them, but you can start with a low-cost ramp. And by ramp, it's increasing my maximum Magicka and my willpower for a minute or 2 minutes, and by the end, I'm increasing my Intelligence, Willpower, Magicka, and Feather for 2 minutes on all of them. If I want to as well, there are Fortify Magicka potions, and I can just chug Restore Magicka potions. After you get 100 Alchemy, really it's nuts how many potions you can make. They're not very expensive. They're not very difficult to find. There are, when you're using the filter, if you just go to Restore Magicka, there's going to be this is the big one, and flax seeds. I think I already made all my flax seeds, but each one of these is going to make me 2 Restore Magicka potions. So it's a lot better than it ever was in Classic Oblivion, because that's a lot of Restore Magicka potions that more than I could ever use. All right, and there you go. Now I have a Resist Magic Sigil Stone, and I even got 1 extra Fortify Magicka Sigil Stone. So if we wanted to look at my gear quick, the Mundane Ring, Savior's Hide, which gives me 25% magic resist. So that's 75% magic resist with some spell reflect right there. Some Fortify Magicka gauntlets, boots. My shield, I added Shock Shield to get my armor up. Cruelty's Heart because, well, I just got those better sigil stones, so I could use those now, but I didn't get something for a while. So the 10 willpower and the carry weight wasn't bad. Fire Shield on my pants, Shock Shield on my ring, because honestly, if I unequip one of them, I'm not at the armor cap, and it's making me not really like light armor. So I will say, if you are going to do this build, either don't wear armor at all and just use these types of enchants, or if you do wear light armor and you don't mind the spell effectiveness, use a trainer to get your light armor up. This is with 75 armor skill. I haven't over repaired my gear, but I think the gear for light armor just breaks so quickly that that without 3, so I need 3 full enchants of just armor to get beyond 75, because I have 25 here from the Shock Shield, and here. So Zapping Shield, Fire Pants, and Electric Bubble, that's adding 75% shield. With 2 of them, I'm only at 75. So all that light armor is only giving me 25% armor. It's pretty awful without a shield. So I do not recommend wearing light armor, because this 13 armor coming from the shield is not added to my armor because I'm using a bow, not a one-handed weapon. So people without bows have a lot worse armor. Light armor really needs you to get that 100 point, because that's a 50% boost to the armor rating, and to get your armor up to 75. And those things are just taking so long for me to level up. This is me using trainers on light armor and marksman just to get them to expert, because I didn't want to have to use feather more, and I wanted some chance to paralyze. But I'd rather be able to use my trainer to get to master paralyze than focus so much on light armor. It's just taking a long time. Armor as well. I know a lot of people say it levels fast, but sometimes I forget to repair my gear, and that's been a pain. It also, if I click really fast, it's been crashing my game, and that's been making me avoid it more too. So because of these problems, I'm leaning a little bit more towards dropping light armor. You could also grab another major skill that might benefit you more if you ditch the light armor. Though early game could be a little more difficult, you'd rely more on dodging physical attacks, which isn't the hardest thing to do as an archer. So you are still, it's not just an arcane mage, you're also an archer. And because of that, you're focused on keeping your distance and running away from your enemies and staying alive. All right, that's all I got. Sorry it was so long. Thanks for watching.